Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy Jonathan Macri with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School podcast. And I am pleased to be joined today by someone I can now call a returning guest. He was not so offended by anything that happened on the last time he was on to say, like, to hell with you guys. I'm never stepping foot in front of that microphone again, not at least with y'all, which we thank him for. James Edwards III of The Athletic. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. I appreciate you having me on. Honored to be a returning guest. Thank you.
Well, I actually want to start. I did this last time with like a little bit of like, talked about the personal side of you coming over the Knicks beat. Not that there's like been a big development since then, but you have kind of taken the mantle of the Fred Katz co-host, or once every other episode, because he does the 2 a week of Katz and Shoot, the America's most popular, rising niche Patreon basketball podcast. So I just want to ask you, like, I know from talking to Fred, you have to deal with him offline a lot.
Yes.
How have you survived dealing with that monstrosity of a human being on the airwaves once a week?
Yeah, it's been difficult. Listen, Fred's a beautiful soul, but to have to talk to him that much is like, I don't know how his wife does it. And I only have to do it every couple of days. It's truly something, but he's a great guy. And I'm glad to be on his podcast, but yeah, it's definitely, before I moved here, I would talk to him maybe once a week. Now it's like 100 times a week. It's a lot different.
Was that not in the contract or
that was not?
No. Yeah, no, I didn't think so. You're in my thoughts and prayers every day.
Thank you.
But you guys are killing it. Because obviously you're now on the Knicks beat, and Fred can't seem to quit.
He'll never leave.
No, I think that much has become clear so far. And it's been great because of you guys, but also because you guys have a great team to discuss. And let me go back a second. I don't mean that to say that the Knicks are a great team, because I don't think they're a great team yet. Maybe we can get into that. But I mean, as far as stuff to talk about and stuff to get into. So I'm just going to start there. As far as like, we're a month and a half almost into the season. Do you feel like it's been a juicy team as far as stuff for you to think about, write about, and like developing storylines and all that?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a good question. I think up until like a week ago, I didn't think they had honestly beaten a good team. I think the first big win was Denver in terms of quality of opponent and the way they handled them, and then Orlando obviously checks that box as well. I thought the offense and how good it's been. The majority of the time is something that's been fascinating because it is on pace to be one of the best NBA's best ever. But then they play against these aggressive switch everything teams, and they look kind of pedestrian at times. And then other times they look phenomenal. Defensively, they've struggled. Lately, they've put together some really good stretches. OG's run, Mikal's interesting season to date. Like, there's been a lot to talk about for sure. And I think New York fans have enjoyed that, even if they haven't necessarily enjoyed how things have shaken out the first month and a half of the season. There's been enough for everybody to kind of dissect and keep you interested for the next game and the next game, just to see if anything changes with certain things. And that's always good.
There's I don't know if you felt this way covering the Pistons, which was obviously a different animal the last few years than what the last few years have been with the Knicks. But like, it feels like you get to a point in every season where the season kind of like everything evens out. It's like you kind of know what you're dealing with, and it's like, and I guess my biggest question right now, I'm curious what you think. Not only what you think, but also, do you think the team buys into any of this? Like, I'm wondering, is this did we get to that point now with the Knicks, which would dovetail nicely with what many of us were saying on the fan side of it, which is like, give it 20 games, give it 20 games, give it 20 games. Were you thinking along those lines of like, give it 20 games? And do you think the team has ever been thinking about like, give it a certain number?
Yeah, I definitely was. And I think part of that is me being new and not wanting to be the guy that like jumps to such drastic conclusions before really making a fair assessment, because basketball is so unique in the fact that there's really no preseason. Like there is, but there's not. Camps, these guys are together in camp, but that's different. And then they had so many injuries. Like to me, it felt like a little disjointed to how they started the year because of various factors. Do I think the players think like that? I don't think so. I think it's hard for the players to accept that, like, right. It's like when you're at home and your girlfriend or your wife wants you to fix something. You might not have the tools, right? But you think in your head you can fix something, even if you're still waiting for the right equipment to do so. And I think it's that. I think players just have high standards for themselves. I do generally think Thibs waits 20 games to make any sweeping conclusions. I feel like over the last few days, even in his press conferences, you've heard him be a little bit more pull back the curtain. Like not everything has been rosy when he's talked, as opposed to I felt like there were times leading up to the last week or so, he would emphasize how good the offense has been. Right now you hear him talking about Mikal will be fine. Like he's acknowledging that there is something for him to be fine about. Right. So I think he genuinely prescribes to that, but I don't think the players do, but I do. Yeah. I didn't want to be the guy that came in here and rushed to judgment right away off one way or the other.
I want to get back to Thibs because you wrote I loved everything you've written since you've come on the beat, but my favorite of the pieces you've written about Tom Thibodeau, we'll get back to that in a minute, but just getting back to that idea of him now, he's maybe going to be a little bit more, I don't know, openly critical. I don't know if that's what you'd say. Based on, again, obviously being around the team, if you had to wager a guess as to what his biggest area of concern is, or if there is a huge area of concern for him, what do you think you would say?
I definitely think it's the defensive side of the floor. I think he's continued to emphasize, in bits and pieces, how much better they need to be at contesting shots, how much better they need to be at the point of attack. He's obviously always been a guy that, I don't want to say speaks in code. I don't think that's fair, but you have to kind of move some stuff around to see what he really means. And I think that, like I kind of said earlier, bits and pieces have started to seep out the last few days. And I genuinely think that he's very much proud of how the offense has performed. I think he very much takes pride in how good the offense is because, as I've mentioned before, and others have mentioned, yourself included, he's had top 5 offenses in other places, but he still doesn't seem to get the credit I think he probably feels he deserves on that side of the ball.
I have that line that you wrote in your article 2 articles ago when you wrote after the Denver game, that you snuck that in there. And I'm so happy James pointed that out because it doesn't get pointed out enough.
Yeah. And if you ask him about it, he's very I think I had asked him straight up, why do you think that is, that narrative doesn't stick to you, but the defensive one does? And he basically talked about people don't do the work. And I think it's very clear that this guy has played modern NBA basketball for every era. I mean, he's had kind of different eras. The Derrick Rose era was more pick and roll heavy than, it's pick and roll heavy now. It's still a different type of pick and roll basketball, right? He's always leaned into it, whatever the analytics say at the time, and he's succeeded. But I think at a point defensively, he knows that this team's going to need to get to a certain threshold for them to compete for what they want to compete for. The offense is going to be there. They just have too many talented guys, but there's going to be cold nights. And he's one of those guys that talk about winning. How do you win games when shots aren't going in? And I think that's been a little bit of an issue at times for the Knicks this year, especially against the good teams, is when shots aren't going in. And most of it's because the other team is defending in a certain way that they're stifling those shots. How do you find ways to win?
Yeah. I don't want to get sidetracked because this could be an entire podcast, but something I was thinking about earlier today, I was looking at Boston's shot distribution, which is there's their shot distribution, and then there's the other 29 teams shot.
Yeah.
And it carried over from the playoffs. They took 48% of their shots from behind the arc in the playoffs last year. The next closest team, I think, was Philly with like 42 point something percent, whatever it was. If I could give him like truth serum, like there's a lot of questions I'd love to ask him, but I wonder what he thinks of the Celtics doing that, and like because they're so uniquely built, and those players have like they're every single one of them have like you ask them go take a dozen threes tonight, they're gonna be like, okay, it's freaking great.
Yeah.
And like the Knicks aren't. Well, maybe I'll ask you. You're the reporter. I don't think the Knicks have players that are quite like that. I think they will shoot threes, and they're comfortable shooting threes, obviously. But I don't. I think these guys. That's not necessarily what they want to do. So, like, how does that work with the like when the shots aren't full? I'm fascinated by that whole aspect of it.
I'm with you too, and I think that's something I've seen you talk about it and tweet about it. Like, and I'm in lockstep with you. I think this team's personnel isn't necessarily. It's not exactly what conducive to the type of offense Tom would like to have, but he's making it work, and they're making it work. Because I agree with you. Like Jalen has historically wanted to get to the mid range, right? And he's a guy who makes and takes, like, they're not bad shots. I hate saying the word awkward, but he shoots awkward shots, right? Like he doesn't always get all the way to the rim. He doesn't shoot a ton of threes. I mean, he shoots a good amount of them, right? But we know where Jalen likes to live. Mikal, we learned that loves to take mid-range shots. That's one thing we've learned over the last month and a half, right? OG for a while was turning down threes to get to either to the rim or mid-range shots. Cat is shooting threes, but even him, like, there's games where he's not shooting as much as you would like him to. Josh Hart obviously shooting well from three, but he's not a big volume 3-point guy. I think there is a time where that will benefit them. Like, it's benefited them now, of course, but like playoff basketball, when you just need a basket, like I very much think that'll help them out. But to your point, I think Thibs still wants them to shoot more threes than they have. If you had to have like truth serum with them,
that's so funny because obviously they sent out Dante in the trade, and he's like, what he wants to do. That's something to monitor. And I guess actually it's a good it's a good transition because you had a great tidbit in your article that you just co-wrote with Fred, in which you guys kind of went back and forth about a few topics, and it dovetailed very nicely with a question that you asked Mr. Thibs at the press conference about the notion of him playing two bigs together. I think you specifically asked about Sims and Cat. And then in the article that you wrote with Fred, you I don't want to say you predicted, but like you kind of offered an opinion that you thought Mitch, if he comes back and he looks healthy, like he would play a fair amount with Cat. So I'm just so fascinated by this because it's 21 games. We have yet to see 1 minute, or forget a minute. We've yet to see one possession where Karl-Anthony Towns has been anything but a 5. And yet Tim said, he's like, I've thought about, like, where do you think this is going? Because I'm in the dark. I don't know.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. Me and Fred were talking about it. Aside from the story, for his Thibs has tried three guards. He's tinkered with the rotations this year. He's tinkered with schemes. Like, if you would have asked anybody, like, if he was going to be experimental, what would be the top of that list? I think we all would have said, well, he's probably going to try two bigs. Like, he's probably going to play Cat with another big because we've seen it work in Minnesota. And defensively, they've had issues, right? We thought that would have been something they would have tried early on, and it hasn't. My theory, and I don't know Thibs well enough, I feel like a lot of the really good coaches like to keep something in the back pocket. It's obviously it hasn't worked. This season hasn't gone to perfection, but they've had a good season to start. Maybe it's worth like keeping something and not having the book out and not knowing other teams knowing what it's going to look like with Cat at the 4 and well, I guess in this case Sims at the 5, or when Precious comes back, which looks like it could be any day now. Like I agree. Like he said that they've started to work on it. Cat got banged up a little bit. Then they haven't been practicing a ton. I don't know if that's I don't know if fans know that because Thibs obviously has that narrative. They don't practice a lot.
I talked about it with Fred when he was last time.
Okay.
He's like, they don't practice ever.
They rarely have practice. But I think, my prediction, my gut prediction, I don't know anything. I think there's just something a wrinkle to keep close to the vest until maybe it's absolutely not absolutely needed, but until the time is right.
The only reason that spurred that thought is I was thinking like, well, they could always trade for a player who maybe is more willing from three. And I'm looking at how the season has started. I don't know about you. I've been incredibly impressed by Jericho Sims. Maybe that's relative to the expectations of not even preseason expectations. I know he was not as bad as like a lot of fans were making him out to be. And I feel bad I gave into some of that, but like he underwhelmed for me, at least over the first like couple weeks of the year.
That's fair.
And he's come around so much. And now we got Precious coming back, and I know I'm excited about that. I would imagine the team is excited. And then you also add Mitch to that. It doesn't like I'm not asking you to predict who they're going to trade or if they're like, but it does feel kind of ripe for like if there's something to be done that they have the roster maneuverability to do it.
Yeah, I think given the financial situation being sticky and they still have some assets. Like I definitely think it's set up for something to happen if they wanted to. Like this team is very clearly in. They're not afraid to swing for the fences, right? And Precious Precious is done after this year in terms of his contract. And Mitch has 2 years, has this year and next year left. Like I think people have seen it around. Like that's $20 million in salary they could piece something together for. If they believe that Jericho could handle backup minutes, especially because Thibs obviously plays his starters significant minutes. Like if he feels comfortable playing Jericho 15 minutes, or maybe if he needs to throw Huck Porty in there for 5 minutes or whatever, like if they really felt like they needed to upgrade the roster, there's a way to do so. And you look at the front court, but yeah, credit to Jericho. I think he's just been like solid and like his positioning on defense, not even just like around the rim, like even in like guarding pick and rolls and in drop, like he's been in pretty good positioning. He just looks like a young guy that's learning how to play the game. And we're all seeing it we're all seeing him pass the test in front of our eyes.
So we literally had breaking news. The Knicks PR just put out the injury report for tomorrow, and Precious Achiuwa, your lips to God's ears, apparently, James. Questionable. There it is.
It's been a while.
It's been since last season.
You're right. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, he hasn't played at all this season.
There you go.
He got what? Was it the last preseason game? Second.
It was against Washington. Was that the last preseason game?
Might have been. Yes, that's
my memory is shit. So I don't know. But it was either the last one or the next to last one. Yeah, man, I'm really curious, and it's like, this is what I love about basketball, because you have you could talk X's and O's, and you could talk trades, you could talk, and yet all of this stuff ties together, because if like how all in they are with like push comes to shove, we're in a high level playoff series, like Cat's going to be the 5 for like whatever 60-70% of the minutes he's out there at least.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then that informs obviously what you're going to do on the transaction market, and then the flip side of that is true. I think that for me, that is my biggest question that I but I'm like curious about over the next 2 months. I'll ask you the same question. What are you wondering about, like from a roster standpoint and stuff?
No, that's the same for me, because I think there is, based on how the season has gone today, I think there is legitimate reason to try Mitch I'm not saying start Mitch at the 5, but I feel Mitch feels more valuable to this roster to me now than he did in the middle of October. Just based on how things have played out in terms of how they struggled defensively, right? Like the rim protection outside of Jericho hasn't been great. And we know obviously Minnesota felt like Cat was a 4 defensively, and they had their most successful season under that. So that's fascinating to me, because I do, to your point, think that like Mitch, there's a very much clear role for playing a center next to Cat on this team. But also with that said, like, is this team tired of Mitch missing games? And do they trust that he's a guy
what do you think
they want?
It's an unfair question, because I think it's something that they're pondering.
Yeah. Okay. Do we trust Mitch to be available, or do we need to look elsewhere to find more stability at the center position. Obviously, when he plays, he's great, but he misses a lot of games.
Yeah, and it's like, and I know you haven't been here for the majority of his career. Like, he's had such an interesting career. I won't characterize them as like ups and downs, but like, it wasn't just the injuries with him. It was always the consistency. Like, when we were going to get like full Mitch, and like the last few years, I feel like we've gotten it more, especially the beginning of last season. That was the best stretch of his career, where he was being talked about as like an all defense guy, and then he got hurt. So it's like, I don't know. He's a tough guy for me to consider and think about because there's just so much going on. But yeah, it is. We'll see. Shout out to Turtle Beach. Whether it's for the gamer in your life or for you to relive those holiday gaming marathons, Turtle Beach has the cheat code for the best gift of the year. For a limited time only, our listeners, yes, listeners of KFS, get 10% off your entire order when you use code KFS at turtlebeach.com. Again, that's 10% off your order at turtlebeach.com if you use promo code KFS. Go to turtlebeach.com now to get your Gen 3 Stealth 700 headset and gift the feeling of Christmas morning all over again. You guys can see right now, if you're watching the KFS YouTube channel, I am wearing the Turtle Beach Gen 3 Stealth 700 headset. This thing is awesome. A couple of reasons why. It has an 80-hour battery life with their quick charge technology. That's good. It has cross-play dual wireless transmitter system. That means you could switch back and forth between multiple consoles. You could switch between your console and your phone if you want to stream music, you want to take a call, all those things. And best of all, they don't just have amazing headsets. If you go to turtlebeach.com, they have every gaming accessory you could possibly want, all high quality, all fair prices, flight, racing simulators, controllers, keyboards, mice, everything you could possibly need. One more time, get the ultimate immersive gaming experience with Turtle Beach today. Turtlebeach.com, use code KFS for 10% off your entire order. That's 10% off your entire order at turtlebeach.com with promo code KFS. Don't delay. Get the perfect gift now. Happy holidays from Turtle Beach. Let me go to the Thibs article because I've held back for long enough. Mm-hmm. So you wrote this piece a few weeks ago on Thibs and his relationship under the guise of like his relationship with refs. But for me, it was about so much more than that, because I think in like you look at it through this very specific lens of like, he's never gotten tossed from a game. And it's because, and you got so many great quotes on the record about like all these refs basically saying the same thing, which is like, he just cares about the basketball. It's all he's interested in. He doesn't care about anything else. That's trying to make it personal. But to me, that was such I'm losing the words here, but like an insight into why he is the way he is and why he kind of ticks the way he does. So I'm just gonna like open the floor to you. Like, what are your thoughts about that whole experience reporting on that piece?
No, I really appreciate that. So when I learned from somebody that he had never been tossed, I had to like double check with that person. Like, are you sure he hasn't been tossed in New York or ever? He's like, I'm pretty sure never. And so I did some Googles, like Tom Thibodeau ejected. I'm like, if he's been ejected, like there's some sick video of him just losing his shit or something like that. And the only thing you can find is like a fine. And like, I'm like, okay. So then I call the league and I'm like, hey, can you guys just verify for me that Tom has never been ejected? And they were able to verify for me that he had never been ejected. And I was like, there's this narrative about him, and I see him like he's very, I don't want to say demonstrative on the sideline, but he always looks mad, right, on the sideline. I think that's the best way to put it. And you see when he's talking to the refs, it feels very aggressive. So I was like, how does that happen? Like I would love to know, is he just look angry as he's saying nice things? Like what's happening? How has it never happened once? And I was like, how's the best way to tell them? Like I could ask his players, but like how truthful, like how much do they actually hear? Like whatever. And then I was like, I don't think anybody's ever like written a profile on a guy from like the perspective of the refs. And I was like, well, this could be a dud, but like, let me like at least see. Like this could not work how I think it's going to work. And luckily I was able to get in contact with 3 retired refs because I can't talk to refs that are currently reffing per the NBA rules. And came to find out, which kind of like I've learned over the last few weeks or months, is like Thibs is kind of funny and he just cares about basketball. Like he does not insult. He doesn't. Yeah, like I wrote in the piece, like, hey, you effing idiot, that's a travel. He'll never say that. He'll be like, that's an effing travel. He keeps it basketball. And I also think there's like, at this point, because of how much the older refs respect him, that even though there's like issues with a lot of older coaches and newer refs, I think it's like a game of telephone where it's gotten out there like, hey, like Thibs is going to be aggressive, but he's not ever going to step across the line. And I think you see kind of like the younger refs, like not ignore him, but like let Thibs do what he does because they know in 30 seconds he'll drop it, right? Like it's on to the next play. But it's also, you always hear how basketball wise, he's so like on to the next play. And then you hear it with the refs, like, okay, he'll complain for a split second, then he's on to the next play. Or you hear with his players how intense he is. And then you hear like he's intense with the refs, but it's always respectful. And you understand why his players like him, right? And then it's also like you see these little moments of like how funny he is. And then it's like, yeah, like he's also funny, like aside from like how you view him on the sideline and think he like does like funny faces or whatever, like he actually is like says funny things too. So I thought it was like an all-encompassing way of like showing his personality with kind of like under the guise of like this shocking bit of information that I would imagine everybody would assume that Thibs got tossed at least once. Everybody, like I figured if I didn't know he never got tossed, like that's news to everybody else too. So I was like, this is the funnel for the rest of the profile.
Well, it was great, and yeah, you do assume every coach gets tossed at least. And meanwhile, he hasn't gotten a tech. I don't think he's gotten a tech this year.
I don't think so. Rick got one.
Oh yeah, Rick.
Rick got one. I don't think Thibs has got one, but Rick got one. Yeah,
yeah. One more, and then I could. Listeners know I could talk to you about Thibs for a long time. Has anything surprised you about him since covering the team?
Yeah, a couple things. He is funny. Like I think he's genuinely a funny guy. Not like in a like.
I'm a clown. I'm here to amuse you.
Yeah. Like I just think he like says things that he knows are funny, but just his delivery, like he has good comedic timing. Like I think he's like funny.
Funny guy.
I'm surprised how little they do practice because again, you hear the narrative from a distance about Thibs, and like you assume not all of it's true, but I figure that like they practiced a lot. His players play a lot of minutes, blah 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 blah. Like they don't practice. Like it's very rare. Like he gives his guys a lot of time to recover and things of that nature. And he has like his, and fans know this, he has his cliches. Like you play to your strengths, cover up your weaknesses. There's a couple more. Talking to medical.
Like game tells you what to do.
Yeah. He has his sayings. He doesn't like to divulge too much. But like if you ask him certain things, like he's very passionate about certain things, and you can get some really good answers out of him.
Has there been a moment where you've asked him something that he's given you a really nice answer that you're like, oh, that's really good?
Yeah, there's been a couple. The most recent one that comes to mind is he loves talking about like players and their journeys. So I asked him about campaign and just like he's been around Thibs has been around the block. Like how much does somebody who has that type of appreciation for where they are, like how much does that radiate throughout a locker room? And he went on like talking about like Cam's time in Phoenix, like in Landry's time in Phoenix, and them playing in finals and big games and going through adversity in Cam's sake, like going overseas and coming back to play big minutes for a finals team. Like that was important for them when they were looking to fill out the rest of their roster. There was another one at the beginning of the year. Golly, what did it have to do with? I can't remember, but it was either something about rim protection.
Oh, okay, like a specific like X's and O's type of thing.
Yeah, if you can word your X's and O's question really well, like I asked him once at the beginning of the year because we were talking about how the issue. I told him like the issue I have with the NBA today is every team plays the same, and like obviously every team wants to shoot threes. They want to get to the rim. They want to get to free throw line. You don't see like, not everybody has the exact same style, but it's not like the 90s and the early 2000s where it's like, okay, you went to Detroit, you got the Ben Wallace guys, like they play a different style than the Kobe Lakers or the Knicks at the time, right? And I asked him, like, from a fan, if he likes how much he has to preach the newness or where the game is going. Like, does he miss like having different styles? And I can't remember his answer, but it was pretty good. He was talking about how at the end of the day, basketball has always been about creating advantages, finding ways to collapse the defense, and getting good shots. Now we're just doing it by dribble, drive, kick out. Before it was you throw it in the post, you get a double team. Like the basketball has always been about trying to create a 4-on-5 or a 3-on-5 in the half court. It's just how you go about it has changed throughout time. It was a really interesting answer.
Yeah, but I like it because like everything for me, when he says stuff, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Like he's very, you know, I can't really think of an answer he's given that it was like, oh, that's weird. You mentioned campaign, and I'm happy you did because that's your most recent piece that dropped today. You wrote about Cam's journey and this great, another great quote that you got in which, you know, the idea of like he had to go to China briefly, but he had to go because he was out of the league. Because and I until you wrote it, I forgot that he was with the Cavs. Well, did he have like a cup of coffee with the Cavs? I
forgot that he was with the Cavs until I like sat down to write the story. Yeah, like I think he played 8 games.
I remember the Bulls. I
forgot about it.
Thunder. Yeah, it's wild, and you know he was out of the league.
I forgot that he was a lottery pick too.
14th or 13th?
Yeah, I forgot that Cam. In my brain, I always thought he was like a late first, but I forgot that he was a lottery pick.
Yeah, and then like my recollection of it, and again, my memory is not good. Is like right off the bat, it was not going well for him in Oklahoma City. Yeah,
nope.
Yeah.
So he's had an interesting journey, and I think we talk about Jericho Sims earlier. Like Cam has just been really solid for this team, man. That's like really good.
Where would they be? I honestly, I feel like I could ask that. Like, where would they be without him? How many times he's provided a spark off the bench?
Yes.
And like given them a jolt of energy defensively. How many times we've seen the starters go out there and it's like, oh, you guys don't have it tonight defensively. Like we need to do something about that. And he comes in, it's like, boom.
Yeah. And also, and I think we talked about this before, like when the starters are feeling like they don't want to shoot threes, like Cam comes in and like it has a quick trigger and gets them up. And the dude is shooting like 44% on like from 3. Like it's insane how well he's shooting. Is that going to hold? Probably not. But sneakily, he's been like shooting. If you never looked at the numbers and you just looked at the jump shot, you're like, oh, Cam is by far like this is going to die down. This is by far the best he's ever shot 3 from his career. Like, no, he's kind of been like high 30s the last few seasons. And he kind of made the point, it was off the record. I think we were in the locker room and Fred was talking to him about his shot. Because obviously everybody talks about his form or whatever. And he made the best comparison that I had never thought about. He's like, I shoot just like Kyle Lowry. I'm just left-handed. And I thought about it. I'm like, Kyle does have a twist to his body. It's not as drastic as Cam. But when he said it, it's like, I'm not mad at that take. Like their forms are almost similar. Yeah. But nobody gives Kyle anything because he's right-handed and it doesn't look as awkward.
Who was Kevin Martin? He had an awkward.
Yes. Very awkward.
Yeah.
Went in.
I'm trying to think of like other awkward releases.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Reggie, obviously, you know.
Reggie. Yes, exactly. Very awkward. Who else? I'm trying to
But think. If it works and it like clearly it works.
Goes in. He's been really good this year, man. There's just the energy. He's got, I think he has like one of the longest wingspans in basketball, if I'm not mistaken. His arms are super long. Again, he's playing the way Thibs, like you hear about how Thibs wants to play. They're playing fast. They're getting the ball up the court when Cam's on there. They're shooting up. They're getting threes up. He's doing exactly what they're asking of him. And I think he's had like a really, really solid season so far.
It's so funny. Before the season, everybody, or at least I feel like everybody was talking, and I certainly talked about it, like the depth. Like everybody's first concern was the depth. And you look at it, and like, I'm sure after the last few games, the net rating of I haven't looked at it actually in a couple of days. The net rating of their starting five has gotten better, but like, hasn't been any great shakes for most of the year. And like, the depth has been, I guess it depends what you mean by the word depth, because they're only playing 8 guys.
Yeah. Right. The 3 that are coming off the bench have been pretty good this year, right?
Yes,
but they're usually playing with at least another starter or 2. But I mean, listen, Precious was really, like, you can make the case Precious was one of their best players in the preseason, if I'm not mistaken. I feel like he had a really good preseason.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very good. And we know what Mitch can do, right? So we're talking about an extra 2 more guys that at some point will be back. Like, I agree. The depth has been the least of the concerns to this point. And I mean, Deuce has been so good. Every jump shot he takes, I think it's like going in. He doesn't even touch rim at this point. It's silky smooth.
James, has anyone talked to you about, like, I know you've seen the numbers from his rookie year and, like, to a lesser extent his second year, but it's like he didn't want to shoot. It's not just that it was the percentages were bad. It's just that this is I never
used to pass up shots a lot.
Yeah, never in a million years would I have thought this was the most improbable thing I think I've seen in, like, all my years as a Knicks fan.
I didn't know that. I didn't know he was passing up shots like that. Yeah. I don't remember, like, his rookie year or anything like that. But you telling me that and knowing what I know now and last year, and since he's, like, been a regular rotate, that shocks me, because the kid shoots anytime he has a sliver of space, and it's cash money every other time.
Yeah, no, it's a while. So let's end with this. Let's try to make some predictions here. So Precious Achiuwa questionable. So first things first, whether it's against Charlotte or against I forget who they're playing after Charlotte.
Pistons Saturday.
Pistons and then Raptors. Whenever he comes back, 8-man rotation or 9-man rotation?
9.
We can talk it out. We can talk through it if you want to talk.
9. I think you're sending a bad message if you don't play Jericho.
Okay.
If you're someone who preaches guys playing the right way, guys doing the things that, like, aside from just rim protection, right? Like improving and knowing where to be, and used to foul, doesn't really foul anymore. Like taking the steps necessary to do what they should do to be in Thibs' rotation and excelling or doing well once they're in there. I think that's a bad message. And I think that I also think that, like, the starting unit is smaller. I do think that bench unit, he's going to want to play just a different style, a little bit bigger. And I think we saw that in the preseason. I think a lot of Precious's minutes were with Sims, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I'm wrong. I have a bad memory.
Well, no, because he was playing McCall plus it wasn't always McCall. I think there were times maybe it was somebody else, but there was a starter plus 4 subs.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Yes. And I think that's going to carry over. Jericho deserves to be in the rotation. I think he deserves to play himself out of it. And I think Thibs, if I had to guess, would agree with that.
That's okay. So that's going to be interesting, because then the next question I would have, and I agree with you, by the way, I think, and I agree with you for because of the rationale that you had. And also, like, I think it'll be good. I don't know exactly how it's going to look. And I guess this leads to my next question, which is, unless you could think of something, I don't know of a way that you could play for a 9-man rotation and always have 2 starters on the floor, which is thus far what he's always had 2 starters on the floor. So I think at some point, even if it's for like a couple minutes, he's going to have one starter with all the subs. I feel comfortable, like,
I'm with you.
That.
Yeah.
Who do we think that starter is?
McHale.
It's McHale. Okay.
I think he's shown a willingness to play McHale. I think McHale's played the most minutes in the NBA, if I'm not mistaken.
He has.
Yeah. Obviously, OG who's been phenomenal this season, has had injury issues in the past, right? He's relied on Josh a lot over the last few years. That way, McHale's obviously shown to be durable, but also has the ability to make shots. Give him a little bit of time to maybe put the ball in his hands and try to do some stuff. I think Mikal is probably, I'd say Mikal or Josh, but just for spacing purposes, I probably go Mikal, and the fact that Thibs seems to leave him out there the longest.
Yeah, it's funny because it was early in the year, it was a talking point amongst some of our listeners that like, why are we playing Josh Hart with Jericho Sims when he's the one like non-shooter of the starters? And then sure enough, he started doing the line shift with Hart and Cat are basically tied at the hip.
Yep.
So I think that makes a lot of sense. Mikal being the guy.
So it's kind of like process of elimination. Like I don't have like a great, I don't like feel like I have like this can break down every single reason why, but I just think OG, if you can lessen his load a little bit, that's probably better for the long term of the team. And then obviously Josh, even though he shot the ball well, I don't know. It just feels more like Mikal.
Yeah, I'm curious. I am curious how the minutes shake out because they're playing a lot of minutes. Like I'm not a minutes police guy, but they're. Have you ever had a conversation with Mike Vorkunov, because he wore that title proudly for years?
I don't think I've ever talked to Mike about that. Like me and Mike talk all the time. I don't know if I've talked to him about that. This is my thing with it. I'm a big soccer fan.
Okay.
About 7 guys play 90 minutes twice a week. Like that's a lot. And they're all mostly fine most of the time. Like this is, do I understand when you're up 30? Like, well, I get that. And he's obviously scarred. There's a joke that like deep scar from the Tracy McGrady thing, which he was a good thing for him. Like he's like the first person to be scarred by something positive that happened to him. I think he was on the Rockets bench when McGrady went nuts. That I understand, right? But I also like I said earlier, these guys don't practice. Like, so if you're assuming that they're playing 40 minutes a game and then waking up the next day for a 2-hour practice, that's not it. Like he's giving them time to rest. And there are a lot of players who maybe play, maybe Trae Young's playing 32 minutes a night or whatever, but the Hawks are probably practicing 10 times more than the Knicks are too. So like, I don't know. The guys seem to be, I've never heard anybody complain. So if they're okay with it, then I guess I got to be okay with it. It's
going to be interesting because like you talk about the minutes. It's like, all right, well, you can only decrease, and I shouldn't even say you could only decrease Jalen's minutes so much. Oh, I had a reader of the newsletter who wanted me to ask you a question about not Mikal's minutes, about Jalen Brunson's minutes. That it seems like Thibs has been somewhat purposeful, making sure they don't go too high. Have you had that thought?
I felt like that too. Yeah. I think he's at 32 a game. 33.
I'll look it up
maybe?
Now. It can't be that much higher than that.
Yeah, which I think is like the lowest for the last few seasons. It definitely does feel like that.
He is at 34.1, but to your point, last season 35.4, the season before that 35.0.
So what I have noticed is like when teams wave the white flag and Thibs he'll obviously keep some starters out there. Jalen is usually the one that's like, okay, I'm not like, I'll take Jalen out. OG and Mikal and Josh can still keep playing. It definitely feels like that. I noticed that too.
Yeah.
I think it is intentional. I guess if he's asking, I think it is intentional.
Where I was going to get to is the OG part of it, because you said, and I think a lot of fans would agree with you, that if there's a guy who could stand to have his minutes reduced a little bit, it's OG Anunoby. And you look up at the on-off stuff, and who's the best on-off guy on the Knicks? It's OG Anunoby.
Right.
And obviously this carries over from last year. So I'm very curious to see if I'm just curious to see how it looks, because I agree with you. I think it's going to be 9 guys, but where are the minutes coming from? What are the combinations? That's probably like the next immediate interesting thing that we have to, sink our teeth into.
This team has given us a lot to like pay attention to game, right? And throughout the duration of a long season, it's like the least you can ask for. Like I'm curious to see when the 2 bigs are deployed. I'm curious to see if they go to a 9 or 8 man rotation when Precious comes back. I'm curious to see if they if he finds time for OG to try to dip his minutes, and if he continues to dip Jalen's minutes, like there's a lot to pay attention to.
Yeah, and hopefully, well, for my sake at least, that those things come with some wins. James, thank you again so much for making time.
Thank you for having me, man.
Seriously, the pleasure's all mine. I've been absolutely loving the coverage, both obviously writing on theathletic.com, where anything you put out is a must read, and you going on with Fred, who I love to give Fred shit, but it's appointment listening. So,
thank you.
Yeah. Anything you want to plug, promote, say before we get out of here?
No, nothing, man. I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. I hope everybody has a good holiday coming up. And once again, appreciate you having me on. Big fan of your podcast, and thank you for letting me double dip here in the last month. It's a great honor. Thank you.
Can absolutely double dip all you want. James Edwards III again. If you are somehow not subscribed to The Athletic, what are you doing? Go and rectify that right now. They're always running some kind of a deal. And honestly, whatever you wind up paying for it, it's worth more than that. Because they have lots of great writers, and James is obviously among the best. So thank you for coming on. Thanks everybody for checking out another episode of the Knicks Film School podcast. We will be back with more fun and games before you know it. Peace out.